What's going on, guys? I'm Jody, this is Inspire Woodcraft, and today I want to show you guys how I made these templates to install my concealed hinges on a cabinet job I have going on right now. Now before I get into the build, I do want to explain a few of the components, tools, parts, and pieces needed, or recommended at least, to get a cabinet job like this done so you can pick the right hinges or build the right cabinet in the right dimensions so that you have success. Now, let's say this is the cabinet carcass, and this is the outside. This is where the door would be. Okay, this is going to be a framed system. You're going to have the box right here, the case, if you will. Stuff goes inside of here. And you're going to have a frame that goes all the way around. That's a framed system. If you take said frame off, you have just the carcass, and that's a frameless system. I know, seems self-explanatory, and it is, but in case you didn't know, now you know. Okay, so you're going to have this go all the way around, framed, frameless. That's a really important thing to know because when you go to buy hardware, you're going to need to know whether or not your hinges are getting installed on the frame or whether they're getting installed on the wall of the cabinet itself. Now the other thing is going to be the overlay or inset of the door. So if I put my frame back on here, my door sits here. If it sits on the front over the frame, open up and the door is going to look something like this. Okay, that's going to be an overlay. You can have an overlay that can go flush with the outside of the cabinet itself, might be offset just a little bit here. It can also be inset, which is going to be recessed inside the frame of the door so that there's nothing protruding outside of the frame and everything's nice and flush. It can also be a partial inset, which means it's going to come out proud a little bit, but it's actually going to move farther this direction too. So it's actually a combination of both systems. Now, if we get rid of our frame and we go back to frameless, you can have the same thing. You can have a partial overlay, which is going to be, say, half or somewhere around there, and you're gonna have an inset, and that's gonna be, again, where it's inside the case, probably flush with the outside of the case. So those are the main components of how cabinet doors relate to the cabinet type, and that's going to all relate to the hinges. So depending on your hinges, in my case, I'm going to have a frameless system. So my hinges are going to install with 2 screws right here, right into the side of the cabinet. In fact, I have an example right here. Okay, this is the outside of the cabinet. Inside, this is the front, this is the door, right? We're gonna open the door this way. So as you can see, my door opens this way, and these mount directly onto the frame itself. Hopefully that showed up. So this is actually a mock-up of the hinges that I used, is what I needed for what I wanted in the job that I made. Now this cabinet that I'm making is a ground up design, so I could control how I wanted my doors to look, how I wanted the feel of it to look, whether or not I wanted there to be a reveal or inset door, and so on and so forth. But I needed to know that prior to building said unit so that I knew this hinge system that I could afford to get away with and utilize to be beneficial to me. That didn't make any sense. Anyways, so again, we're just gonna look for our frame or frameless cabinets, or our offset or our inset, or a partial overlay. And for the most part, that's about it. You're also gonna end up with a set of instructions that come with the hinges that you buy. Hopefully it comes with a set of instructions. And it's gonna come with this little template. The idea is you just cut along that line. This is going to be the template for the frame or the carcass, depending on if you have a frame or frameless system. This is gonna be the template for the recess on the door for the hinge itself. That's gonna be these 2 holes. We have that hole here, and we have these 2 little screw holes here, and that's gonna let us put our hinge in there and screw it in, making it look like that. Now the other thing that I'm gonna bring up is I'm gonna recommend these hinge bits. Now these are self-centering bits. And you'll see me use these here in just a minute, but the idea is, see if I can get this to show up. The idea is that when you drill down, the drill bit itself will self-center inside that hole, and it'll push down inside of there and drill out just enough of a space to be able to get your screw in there. So that little sleeve pulls back, and by doing that, it self-centers that into the hole. It's either that, or you have to try and take like an awl or something and try and get perfectly centered in that little hole and find the center. It almost never works. I don't care how good you are. It's very difficult. I know, because I've had to do it for a long time until I finally got smart enough to just pick up a pair of these. These are 2 different sizes. I really don't know what the sizes are, but they're pretty common. 10 bucks? I don't know. To me, it's worth the investment. Check it out. I'll leave a link below if I can find one. Anyway, so let's get on with the build of these templates. Now, I have a template for the inside. I have a template for the door, and I'll show you how I made those right now. Now, what's nice about little projects like this is you can just use scrap pieces that you have laying around the shop. I've written the measurements on here to help with assisting on the measurements I use to do this. You could use other measurements if you wanted to, as long as you had enough material to actually create the template itself. Now, the 2.5 inch wide pieces, those are gonna be the main portions of our templates. So I went and found the center of each of them and then transferred the marks from the original template over to what now would be a hard template. And like I said earlier, I just made one small adjustment, and that was to move the cup a little farther from the edge, because I feel it gives a little bit better adjustment properties when I actually install them. Typically, this hole is going to be 35 millimeters or 1 3/8 inches. That's my experience from the hinges I've used. And then on these, I would just use a very short piloted countersink to just go barely past the surface, almost about halfway through the plywood. Now, as you guys know, I love my CA glue, and this was no different. I didn't see the point over engineering these, so I'm gonna use CA glue. I'm gonna use an accelerant that's gonna help it adhere a lot faster. I'm just gonna run a bead down the center of one of those thinner 1.5 inch strips, and then I'm gonna center that template right on there. And this is that's gonna be the cap that's gonna keep this thing from moving all over the place for us. And that's it. Now, here's what's really cool about using these templates. For the lower hinge, I position it this way, and I just put the bit in and recess down a little bit. I just want to take a little bit of material off, just enough so that when I take it off and flip it over and put it on the other end, it leaves just a big enough mark so that I can go back and re-drill it out. So by making all of these template holes in the center of the template, you can just flip them over or scoot them from one end to the other, and their measurements are going to be the same regardless. Now, here's where these hinge bits come from, because they're self-centering, and it's literally just this easy. They're depth stop controlled, so it's only gonna go down so far and it won't blow through the front of your door. Sure beats putting a little blue tape on your drill bit and trying to do it that way. And then I screw on the cup portion or the door portion of the hinge. I like to do them by hand, it's just personal preference. I just feel like I have a little bit greater control and not over tightening and stripping out that hole, although it doesn't always work that way. Now, setting that door aside, I would get the project piece, which is where we're going to install the other part of the hinge. Now, because we countersunk those other holes on this template, that self-centering bit will just slide right into those countersunk holes and just drill right in the holes exactly where we need them to be. I thought this was a great idea, and it worked every single time, even on the test pieces that I did. I really like this idea. Now, you can install cabinet doors like this, or you can not be a knucklehead, and you can actually take the hinge apart through one screw, is usually what it takes. The whole thing will come apart, and that piece on the bottom will actually mount to the side of your cabinet or to the frame of your cabinet, depending on what you are using. And then you can hook the two back together with the one screw. I like to do things the hard way, so this is how I did it. Now, it also worked on this flip down lid, which is actually going to be the front face of this cabinet that I'm actually building. That hole is where the computer is going to go. When you flip that lid down, the keyboard and everything, and the writing surface will be outside. Now, that's probably in the next video, but I figured I'd take the time, since I had to make these anyways, and make a video on this specifically. You guys know I love saving time, I love tips and tricks and stuff like that so much that we're actually in the process of developing a second video a week type of situation where it's strictly 3 to 5 minute videos, strictly on a tip or a trick or something that either I've learned or that someone has mentioned to me or that we've found along the way that has helped us do our thing. Anyways, so that's rambling and that's talk for another time. However, hopefully you guys can actually use something like this. I think these are super handy. The only downfall, I suppose, is that it only really works for this one particular type of hinge. The scrap wood is free. The time it takes to actually do this is not that much. So I think that's okay. And the fact that they fit together like this means that I could throw a piece of tape or something on here and clamp them together and throw them in one of the drawers, and you know, they're there when I need them. And I use these particular hinges quite a bit because I like the full overlay and frameless cabinets. I do like the frame actually as well. But if I'm using 2, 3 particular hinges quite a bit, and if I'm doing cabinets a lot, I think a system like this could be pretty good. There is other stuff on the market you can buy. I think Craig makes some. It looks good. The only downfall I've heard of those is that the bit itself is like a proprietary bit to that system, and so you'd have to get that bit from Craig, and I would only use it for that system because once it wears down, you're stuck buying a new one, where this one I can go get anywhere, and you know, a regular Forstner bit you can go get anywhere and you can use it for other things as well without having to worry about it being a specialty part or piece. Anyways guys, I think that about wraps it up. Hopefully somebody out there got some use out of this video, and yeah, thanks so much for watching as always, and I will see you guys in the next video.